Cik, cik. Cek, cek, cek sound, cek. Sudah? Iya, kasih Pak.
morning, everyone. Welcome to the session one, as part of the productive aging. Today, we have a session on socio-economic policy for productive aging and sustainable development. And what they missed in the heading is that this is about NTA, National Transfer Account session. So I would like to first invite Park Maliki, our Deputy Minister from Beppinas, to give the opening remark about this session. Thank you. Please give him a round of applause. Yeah.
Thank you, Anasa. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Bali again, and welcome to the NTA sessions. And I really appreciate for UNFPA for holding this meeting in one of the side events in the regional conference on aging. So actually, it has been a while that we are planning to have like NTA meeting. A few years ago, we planned to have like a regional conference on NTA, but for some reasons, I think it fell because there is a few reasons. One of them is the earthquake in Bali, so everything is canceled. And here we know, so we can have this meeting, even though it is quite limited. And I actually expect Sang Hyopli and also Gretchen to be in Bali, but it seems like the schedule is not possible. So for the NTA itself, Indonesia has been involving with the NTA since it begins in 2003. Yeah, Pak Turo. Yeah, Pak Turo was the witness actually for the creating of the NTA. I was just like joining later on after Pak Turo's and Professor Andy Mason's already like make a plan on the NTAs. After a while, we already can expand a few countries, and I'm glad that we now have quite a lot of countries. I think it is more than 30 countries. And more importantly is that NTA now is like equipped by NTTA, National Time Transfers Account. So it's quite completed tools on how we can actually make an analysis on generational accounts. And we can see who actually produce, who actually consumes. And in Indonesia itself, we've been like estimating the NTAs for several years, and I used the NTA for the formulating the national strategy for the aging. So we can see how actually the elderly in Indonesia finance their consumptions. And it is a bit different from a traditional perspective of the elderly in Indonesia, because when we look at the NTA, the Indonesians elderly still giving, Professor Tuning, still giving until around like 70s. I don't know what's wrong with the estimations. Maybe there is a few factors. Maybe it's like the data factors, or maybe it is actually in fact true that the elderly in Indonesia is actually financing the younger ones. Yeah. But then when I look at last night, we have the local government forum. And there is like programs for the elderly cash transfers in Papua. There's a lot of witness that actually the elderly in Indonesia really proud if they giving the money or giving something to their grandchildren. And maybe it is also as one of the proof that when the elderly have the resources, they can like finance or they can give the children, even though it is very limited. Yeah. And looking forward for the estimations, Professor Andy and also Ronan Lee, I don't know what year was that, but we make a book on the NTA, and Indonesia has one of the chapters on the elderly financing. And we can make like segregated the financing based on rural and urbans, and also the what we call the poor and non-poor. And when I look at the mechanisms for those who actually the non-poor elderly, so the non-poor elderly heavily relies on the public government transfers, the public transfers. In this case, it's like cash transfers. From these cash transfers, we see that if the poor have the cash transfers, they can have the private transfers. Yeah, that is actually maybe it is going to the younger generations. So based on that, it seems like NTA is very useful for us. However, yeah, I mean, from my personal experience, it's still not yet we have like an official numbers of the NTA because we are expecting like the statistical office is producing this one. And then we are as a planning agency or maybe Bulisa as like coordinating ministry can use the NTA for the policy purposes or can use it for the monitoring and evaluations. So then we can see how actually the programs already like perform the outcome of the programs. Yeah. So this is quite useful, and I encourage you, all of you in these rooms, to be like NTA agents for the country, making the NTA, as well as also I encourage Bu Lisa to make the NTTA, the National Time Transfer Account. And Bu Tuning, Professor Tuning, you have to encourage the statistical office to make like a time use surveys. So then we can see how actually the time use is profile. Yeah? Then we can like see how is actually the care economy later on can be developed. Because if we know the time use profile from the women, we can convince the policymaker like me, yeah, but others also to have this care economy produced. So welcome again to the NTA side event and having a fruitful discussions. And again, I encourage you to be NTA agent, and so then the whole world can use the NTA and also the NTTA. Thank you for the speakers and also the audience for coming and also for the fruitful discussions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You have given a very comprehensive and important speech that really outlined the session that we are going to have today. We have 1.5 hours for the session, and the session today won't tell you how to calculate NTA or even ever will, but we want to talk about application of NTA. We have 5 speakers to really talk about the session, but I would like to first start by giving the introductory video of the NTA. For those of you who may not be familiar with NTA, even though we know that from the suggestion and by Prak Maliki, we know already about NTA. But let's have the video. My colleague at the back, please show the video. The voice? Okay.
There have been global demographic age and understanding how these generational changes impact the economy is crucial. Working age adults produce more than they consume. Children and older persons consume more than they produce. Transfer accounts are tools to help understand the impact of population changes. Estimating NTA relies on 3 key types of data. 1. National population age distribution data. 2. National account data. 3. Estimated economic flows by age group in 1-year segments. National transfer accounts data can help to inform policy by estimating life cycle deficits, age reallocation, and other economic flows across and within population generations. NTA estimates offer insights into various aspects of population changes. These include forecasting economic growth and demographic dividends using the economic support ratio, evaluating fiscal status and sustainability through the fiscal support ratio, providing outcomes to estimate future public funding needs, including tax and welfare systems. national transfer accounts to assist with social protection policies and health inequality analysis. Mexico, facing the transition to an age society, uses NTA data to highlight potential challenges to long-term fiscal sustainability and to inform policy decisions. Japan, already having transitioned into an age society with rising expenses in caring for the elderly population, uses NTA for reforming its social security system. Going beyond data for national transfer accounts, national time transfer accounts include unpaid and domestic work to measure non-market production. This highlights gender disparities in economic contributions and intergenerational transfers and emphasizes the use of women. National inclusion accounts break down national by age, socio-economic groups. This expansion better understand how distribution impacts economic growth, inequality, development. In the Asia-Pacific region, diversity is a different demographic unique challenges and opportunities. Communication between NTA led to national action. The Republic of Korea mandates national transfer accounts as an official national system. Recently, use of national time transfer accounts in Iran, Sri Lanka, and Maldives. The growth in the use of national transfer accounts, along with national time transfer accounts, national inclusion will help continue the translation of data into actionable policy, generational economy, and population aging in the Asia-Pacific region.
Thank you. That is the brief introduction in which we have a booklet, that companion booklet together with this video. Now, I would like to start by inviting our three presenters to come on the floor. From Thailand, from China, and also from Thailand, China, Indonesia, sorry. Please come to the floor. Thank you. Please welcome all of them. Today we have 5 speakers to really speak in this session, and 3 from Thailand, Indonesia, and China will give the example of the policy, how the use of NTA for policy applications in the country. But yet we would like to also have like Professor Songyop Lee, Chief of the Economic Department at University of Hawaii, to introduce what is NTA and the policy applications of NTA. We will start with him, and then 3 country experiences, and then we close by having Dr. Gretchen Dunhauer to talk about NTTA, National Time Transfer Account. We have a very tight schedule today because we also have 4 discussants who give you feedback at the end. So each speaker have 10 minutes. So I would like to first start by invite Professor Songyop Lee to really speak, introduce us what is NTA and how relevant it is to policy applications. So I hope that you are now online. Professor Songyop Lee, over to you, please.
Can you see the screen? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we don't. The screen is coming up soon. We can hear you really well and clear. So this Professor Songyop Lee, who has been working with us, in the past 7, 8, 9 years. Okay, you are here. We can see you now. Hello, Songyop. Welcome to Bali virtually. Over to you.
Okay, I showed the presentation. Can you see the presentation?
Yeah, the slide, please. Colleagues.
Okay. So,
We have slide on. Can you bring on the slide?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, it's on now. Songyop, over to you now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Asana, and thank you, everyone. Maliki. Actually, I wanted to be there, but it's really tight schedule. So I spent like 6 hours for lecture, and this is my last task today. So, so the title is Policy Questions on Population Aging and NT Applications. I think people know about what is NTA. So I'm not going to introduce actually NTA, but the question is whether NTA is a good tool for addressing policy questions on population aging. And if the answer is yes, what policy questions? And can you give me examples? I only have 10 minutes. And then why it has not been widely used? Why some people say, okay, we can actually see more evidences. And I will conclude with the concluding remarks. So TA is a good tool for policy questions. And why? So basically NTA integrates population into economy. So we actually construct NTA using population estimates, surveys, administrative record, and macroeconomic data. So basically, this can answer how the population change affect the economy. And it quantifies how each age groups acquire and use economic sources. It so provides a very comprehensive output, including private sector economy. And also it's consistent with the UN Sustainable Council. So, okay. So it has the implication on macroeconomy, comparable across all countries, comparable over time. So it provides evidences for policy questions. Then the question is, so it's popular. I mean, that network has been growing very rapidly. We started in 2002 with 7 countries. Now, almost 100 countries are estimating or constructing NTA. Can you see the, okay, this is actually late. Okay. So it has some important policy questions. I mean, these are just the examples. How large are the demand of dividends? When does the window open and close? How are the people supported? Are current government sustainable? And in the video, we saw the NIA inclusion account and also NTA and how has the intergenerational economy changed over time. So what are the effects of increasing longevity? What is the health capacity? Which I mean, Shen will talk about in during the panel. So NTA has provided and can provide the evidences for the important questions. So let me spend like 2 minutes to just highlight something. Okay, so here we calculate the growth rate, like it's called the demographic based on NTA, and also based on just population structure. Like a population structure is a red line, and NTA base is a blue line, and you see the similarities and differences. For example, between 2020 and 2044, if you calculate based on NTA, it's negative. But if we just calculate like a share of working population, it's positive. So this is actually one country. So when I talk to the government officials, sorry, actually your demographic dividend is a little over, they are shocked. So this is, I mean, one differences between NTA and just using population. But in fact, sorry, okay. So just to provide a of life cycle of countries provide important policy implication. For example, it's probably hard to see, but if we just compare like Japan, Maldives, and Korea has very flat consumption at the end, but Japan and Maldives is very high. So this is actually great, I mean, beneficial for Korea. Why? Korea is aging most rapidly, but still the impact has been mitigated because the per capita consumption, especially healthcare consumption for Korea, is much lower and very cost effective. This is a big issue in Korea right now. I mean, how can you handle the cost of aging, especially the healthcare cost? But Korea is in good position right now, in large part because of this shape. Let me just move on. And we just talked about like a fiscal sustainability, right? So NTA is great for measuring fiscal sustainability and especially debt because the profiles, the age profiles are very distinctive. So the blue line shows like a replaceable benefit, red line shows the burden, so the green line shows the net benefit. So as you can see, So as you can see, as population aging has a great stress on fiscal sustainability or debt. And then this is kind of NIA, right? So, this is an example of USA. I think Gretchen actually produced it. So older persons fund the consumption differently by their income level. So on left-hand side, that's the average. Older people rely heavily on their asset, private asset. But if you look at just the bottom people, then they rely much more on public transfers. So public transfer plays very important role for especially poor people. And then we can also calculate so-called silver dividend. So we can calculate like how much the individual has capacity to work at each age. And if we apply to productivity at each age, we can calculate it. So several papers actually addressed this one. And I think Shenko will also touch upon this silver dividend issue. So people have used the NTA, and it has a huge potential for policy application, but some people still point out kind of difficulties as a policy or even as a research. So one thing they point out or complain is it's difficult to estimate, and some countries actually don't have a good data sets. So we call it like efficiency. So we have to improve the efficiency. And some people say we need more evidence-based policies. So that means whether this is just a research tool or this can be actually used much more widely in policy circle. And third one is whether this is a difficulty of institutionalization, because in many countries it's constructed by individuals. And if the individual changes, then it's
We
hard.
have 1 minute left, Song-yeop, sorry.
Sure. Okay. So I understand that part. So NTA requires a very good quality data and a complex methodology. But NTA has been widely used and provide good policy applications for many, many countries. So one thing I want to point out is that we just don't know who are using it. I don't actually see the screen there. So this is one report by National Assembly Budget Office of South Korea. I got it actually last week. And they say, oh, this is a report. Do you know about this? I have no idea. So the government are using it, but they use it just as a data. So they actually don't know who created this and what's the background of it, but they say this is great data set. And also NTTA. So the Statistics Office produces NTTA and NTA Korea, but they focus more on description of data. And also it's not in English. So they describe it, but when I see this description, there are huge policy implications. So the bottom line is that the stakes of population is very large, and we need the data, and the best data so far is that policy should be informed by this data, which links population and economy is NTA. But there are two main issues. One is how to make it sustainable, institutionalize the NTA policy guidance to effectively create and use the data. And the next one is how to address the gap between producers versus users of NTA. So users do not necessarily provide the sustainable data, but producers like the Statistics Office do not provide sufficient policy implications. So I actually found out these two papers and reports even last week, and they are producers, not users of data. Okay, let me stop there.
Thank you so much, Professor Song-yeop Lee. So really, when we are talking about NTA, we're talking about using it to address demographic dividend, whether it's first dividend or second dividend, in which we can hear from presentation from China, and also in terms of fiscal sustainability. Thank you so much for giving a solid ground for our discussion today, Professor Lee. I hope you stay until we have Q&A in maybe half an hour. So the next presentation, I would like to really invite Piska, I'm sorry, I need my glasses. Sorry, Piska Aurea from Bappinas to really present the NTA work in Indonesia. Over to you, 10 minutes. Can we have a pointer, please? Can we have a pointer? Yeah.
Okay.
Quicker.
Okay.
To control slide. Can we have the slide up, please?
Okay, thank you, Wasana, and very good morning to all of you.
Cannot, right?
Okay.
We have to control slide from the back, right? Sorry,
Okay.
we cannot do that. Sorry.
That's okay. Okay, thank you, Wasana, and very good morning to all of you. I'm very delighted to be here today. And let me share with you some of the analysis we have done using NTA in Indonesia's cases. Yes, next slide, please. Okay. I'd like to start with Indonesia's visions in 2045. As you can see from the graph that Indonesia will age in 2045 regardless of what scenario. And in exactly 100 years of our independence, the share of older populations above 60 will be more than 20% of the populations. And we know that we cannot stop aging, but we can prepare for it as Indonesia strives to foster for independent, prosperous, and dignified older citizens. Maybe next slide, please. So in the next 20 years, aging will set new challenges for us to develop new approaches, strategies, and also policies. And here are some of the implications of aging. The first is the pattern of migrations will likely to be changed because the declining of the younger generation. Even to move to the new capital of Indonesia in Kalimantan, the priority will be given to the younger generations. And second, the shifting age will also demand a new form of social protections as life expectancy increase and people becoming more urban and also workforce changes. The pressure will be likely to increase the retirement age. And the third, we know that aging will at some point creates limits to growth and also productivity that one can contribute to a society. And the structural change also will be affecting this investment and also capital flow because we know that older populations will be more risk averse. And the last is the demand of care economy. We know there will be demand for housing and medical care, nursing, technology. And both government and private sector are going to be asked how to respond to these challenges. Next slide, please. Okay. And the current state of the young populations will shape the social and economic status of the older populations in the future. And one of the indicators we could notice is poverty rate. And here we compare the poverty rate using NTA approach and using per capita expenditure that Central Bureau of Statistics or BPS regularly calculates. The orange lines illustrates the poverty rate based on per capita expenditure, and the gray line applies NTA approach, accounting for expenditure on education, health, and other expenses per single age. As you can see from the graph, using NTA, the poverty rate is higher. But both approaches show that children and old age have a high poverty rate. But here, using NTA approach, you can see NTA approach reveals us interesting difference here because child poverty is really high. But here I'm using the the poverty line that is built for per capita consumption rather than age consumptions. So probably this is one of the reasons why child poverty is really high. And when we see the working age poverty rate using NTA, it's slowly lower. And for the old age, I think both methodology are nearly identical. So it is crucial to pay attention to the younger generations to make sure that their social and economic status improves. So when they grow old, they are more capable of being independent and also wealthier. Next slide. So Indonesia has been involved in development of NTA since 2003, as Pa Maliki mentions, and we also have been always committed to updating the NTA calculations, and this graph represents the recent calculations of Indonesia's life cycle using data of 2022. As you can see here, there are deficits from both younger and also older generations, and indicating the burden of the sandwich generations is way too high. But we must find a way to minimize the deficit, even to turn the deficit into a surplus. So we made a simulations, next slide please. So we made the simulations to improve the productivity by transforming the informal worker to a formal worker who usually have a higher income. And here, if we transform by 5% of the informal worker to formal worker, then the surplus would be extended by 1 year and reduce the deficit by 17%. And again, if we transform by 10% of the informal worker to formal worker, the surplus would be extended by 3 years and reduce the deficit by 33%. And if we transform up to 30%, then the deficit would be changed into a surplus and eliminating the burden of the sandwich generations. And these are mathematical simulations, but we need to emphasize on how we can create this in a real situations, how to boost the productivity and also the income of the working age populations. Next slide, please. Okay. There are several important coping mechanisms for dealing with the predicted stagnations or the declining of the working age populations in Indonesia. However, our goal is to achieve a second dividend, which means to ensuring the current working age population to have a decent job, so that they are not easily falling into poverty. And as my previous graphic, we need to focus on all 3 generations. So every life cycle needs to receive an integrated, inclusive, and adaptive social protections according to their needs. Like here, children, we must ensure that they have a good access to quality of education, not only access, but also the quality of education, especially those who are living in rural areas. And also, education is not limited only for children, but also to extend to the second generations, even to the first generations. Maybe some of you are interested in visiting to elderly school tomorrow. It is also one of the initiatives to support for long life learning, and several policies in employment sector are also crucial to make sure the working age have a decent wages, and also to create an environment to encourage women to return to work, to boost the women labor force participations. And this policy is really important to ensure them to have a good policy so that they are not easily fall into poverty and have a decent life. So in conclusions, the graying of the population certainly put our growth trajectory, but we need to But the more important questions is whether the government can effectively and efficiently respond to these challenges posed by demographic trend. If the government can raise the labor productivity and also build a strong social protections alongside with other initiatives, then I think having an old populations is does not need to be translated to be economic decline. I think I'll stop here and looking forward for the feedbacks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fiska. Thank you. Thank you so much for showing how NTA can be used to address intergenerational inequality in Indonesia. I really like your slide when you put that in terms of life cycle approach, having NTA as a tool for that policy. So now we are moving from Indonesia to China. And from China, the topic going to be on silver dividend and productive aging in China using NTA evidence. And this presenter is Professor Chen Ke from Fudan University School of Social Development and Public Policy. Over to you.
Thank you, Wasana. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here to share our NT research about silver dividend and productive agent in China. Okay, so yes. Okay. So next slide. Thank you. So as we all know that China has been experiencing very fast aging process, the share of the older adults increased from 7% to 15.4% between 2000 and 2023. Yeah, next slides. And along with the aging process, you can see that the support ratio, the ratio of the working age adults to dependents peaked at 2.7 in 2009 before declining again. And by the mid-century, the ratio will be only 1.4. That means 1.4 working age adults to support one dependent. Okay. So there are a lot of discussions on whether population aging will be a drag on economic growth for China. But as NTA has informed us, we cannot treat all of the working age adults as the homogeneous producers and all of the dependents as the homogeneous consumers. We should take into account of the age variations in labor productivity and also consumption. Yeah, next slides. Okay. So as we can see that we have done NT estimates for 5 years between 2002 and 2018. And over this period, there are two very significant changes. One is that the peak earning ages in China has shifted downwards from age 41 in 2002 to only 28 in 2007, and then slightly increased to 30 by 2018. And that is partially because of the fast expansion in college enrollment, so that the urban youth can get into the well-paid, high-tech industries after graduating from college. And also because of the fast urbanization process, so that the young rural migrant workers can have higher earnings in the cities than their older siblings and parents in the countryside. But at the same time, you can see that the labor income has very limited improvement at senior ages. And there was a steeper decrease in labor income in the 50s in 2018 than that in 2002. Next slide, thank you. So that was largely because of the low labor force participation at senior ages in China. So if we compare China with the United States, you will find that at prime working ages, the two countries, they actually had a similar labor force participation. But at senior ages in China, yeah, the left chart is for males. You can see that, yeah, for those in the late 50s, the labor force participation was 73%, but reduced to only 52% for those in the early 60s. But in the US, the male labor force participation at age 55 and 64 was 72%. And for females, the rate in the same age range in the US was standing at 60%, but for China, that was only 43% for those in the late 50s and 34% in the early 60s. Next slides. So is it feasible and also necessary for China to extend the working lives? And the answer is yes, because we are having a much faster increase in life expectancy. You can see that China's life expectancy approached 79 years old in 2022, surpassing that of the United States. Next slides. And we are also having the healthy older population. The healthy life expectancy at age 60 in China in 2000 was 14 years, and then raised to 14.9 in 2010 and 15.9 in 2020. So you can see about 1 year increase per decade. and the pace of increase was faster than that of US and many middle-income countries. Next slide. And also in the coming decades, we will be embracing a more productive older population. So back in 1990, you can see the share of college graduate people by age in urban China was uniformly low, below 10% across the ages. Then by 2010, the share among the youth in the 20s was above 30%. And then by 2020, you can see for those in the 40s, the share was much higher than before. So that means in the coming years, we can make better use of these more productive older workforce. Okay. Next slides. Then we turn to look at the consumption profiles. Okay. So we can see that over the same period, there was much rapid increase in child consumption than the older adults. Yeah, in 2002, the ratio of consumption for youth under age 20 to that for seniors above the age of 65 was 0.87. And by 2018, the ratio increased to 1.03. And that means, yeah, raising the child was much more expensive than supporting the older adult. Next slides. Next slide, sorry. Yeah, next page. Yeah. So if we take a further look at the composition of consumption in 2018, you can see public healthcare consumption, which is in red, in blue color, rose only modestly beyond age 50, and that was in sharp contrast with that of the high-income countries. They will increase very steeply at senior ages. And if you look at the gray color, that is the private consumption other than education and healthcare, which was largely reduced at the senior ages. So it seems that in China, the older adults still had a low tendency to consume. So is it possible for us to increase the demand of the older adults? I think one of the keys lies to improve the economic security for the poor older adults through better social protection system. Next slides. So you can see that China is moving in the right directions. So from this table, which is also estimated by NTA, you can see that the poorest income quartile, the public healthcare transfers received by the poorest income quartile was nearly healthcare transfers received by the richest income quartile was nearly 3 times as high as that received by the poorest quartile in 2010. But in 2014, the ratio was reduced to only 2 to 1. And the decrease in the gap in receiving pension transfers was even more notable. You can see the ratio declined from 53 to 1 in 2010 to less than 9 to 1 by 2014. So that was because the government in China has made great strides in extending the social protection coverage and also increasing the benefit generosity for the underprivileged groups, especially for those rural residents and also urban residents without formal employment. Yeah, next slides. So if we combine the labor income and consumption, you can see the profile of the life cycle deficit. Then in 2018, you can see the starting age of life cycle surplus was 22 years old. That means a 22-year-old in 2018 could be self-sufficient. Their labor income could just cover their expenditures. And the ending age will be 56 years old. So if we combine the age profile of the per capita life cycle deficit with the projected population age structure, then we can do the simulations on the national life cycle deficit or surplus. Next slide, sorry. Yeah, so you can see that in 2018, we are still enjoying the life cycle surplus. But in the future, the aging force alone will exhaust China's life cycle surplus by 2032, so within a decade. And afterwards, China will be embracing the increasing life cycle deficit at the national level. Okay. So how can we learn from these results and how can we respond to these challenges? Next slides. Okay. So we can see that China do have the potential to harvest the silver dividend in the context of aging because we are having a longer, healthy life expectancy and improved human capital. So just a few weeks ago, the government in China has decided to progressively delay the retirement age on the flexible and voluntary basis. China's current age at retirement was set at 60 years old for males and 50 or 55 years old for females, depending on your occupation. And such a scheme was established back in 1950s. So now the new policy will help us to like shift the longer life expectancy to the longer working lives. But at the same time, it's also necessary to promote the lifelong education and the training programs to enhance the capacities of the older workers. The older workers, they had advantage of richer experiences and also broader social network. And they are also more educated. So if they could be equipped with the frontier technologies, so they will be more productive in the workforce. And finally, if we can have the more equalized social protection system, that will enable the older adults to increase the consumption while giving them a more decent life and reducing the care needs of the very old. So in China, this is very important for us to boost the domestic demand because we are shifting towards the consumption-driven growth. And this is also help us to realize the productive aging in China. And as we can see from the last slides, the rising life cycle deficit in China is actually inevitable, just as the aging process. So in this background, so we should like stimulate technological innovation and continuously invest in education to improve the labor productivity of the future workforce, and also to establish a more robust financial institutions to facilitate economic flows across the generations, across the periods, and to better finance the deficit at dependent ages. And all of these measures combined will help us to offset negative impacts of aging on our economy and the society. Thank you. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Shankar. That's very clear that from the case that you share with us from China, it's clear that NTA is a tool that you can really address economic dimension of population aging quite nicely in the way that you're focusing on consumption and production of individuals. Not that once they are 60, they are no longer productive in the workforce. So that's from China. And now we are going to Thailand, which is another country that we also now entering the second demographic dividend, so just like China. So over to Thailand. The speaker is Patharapon Lawong, Plan and Policy Analyst from the National Office of the National Economic and Social Development Council, attached with the Prime Minister Office. So over to you for the case in Thailand. Thank you.
Thank you, Hajjawasana, and good morning, everybody. So I would like to share the case, the NTA application in the policy in Thailand. Next, please. So our journey, our NTA journey in Thailand starts like in the beginning of the 21st century, like around 2002, that we kind of learned how to, produce NTA. And we got the first, NTA compilation in 2006 by TDRI, or Thailand Research Development Institute. And they also produced the NTA 2009. But then, we try to, how can we have the regular and the sustainable manner of producing NTA? So afterwards, the NTA has been transferred to to my office, the National Economic and Social Development Council, to produce NTA since 2019. And up to now, we have the latest one is the NTA 2021. So the time interval for each period is around a few years, of producing NTA. Next. So, from the findings from NTA data and reports, what is NTA has been used, in the policy arena. I think I would like to categorize into 4 areas. So the first one is the data display. So next, please. For the data display, when you look at the NTA report, you kind of, see many figures and graphs, in the NTA report. So what we've been used is, pick up some graph and try to kind of sense making into the policy arena, like down the right left-hand side of you, and this show that, how much of the consumption of each age, interval. Like if you're in the children, how much, each children consume, or how much parents should be prepared for their children in the future. So like in Thailand case, you have to prepare around 3 million baht, to raise a child. And also from, if you are retired, how much do you want? The same figure, around 3.2 million baht that you want from, when you retire until you die. And on your right-hand side, it shows that at the very beginning of age, the early childhood, actually the government spend very less, in terms of the budget. So we use this graph to advocate the child support grant policy. For example, of the policy that we are used. So this one is for the policy advocacy and policy inform. Next, please. And from the report, I think the second area that we are using is to try to make NTA more visible to the public. So like this one, we produce some kind of an easy understanding language, and produce in the social situation and outlook, which we produce quarterly. And in 2020 of this report, we try to put NTA and make the public more get used to NTA and not specific to the specific cycle, because at the beginning NTA has been known by the NTA research or academia or this kind of group, but after 2020 we try to publish more, and so the public may know NTA more on this side. Next, please. The third area, we use NTA in the specific policy beliefs. Like this one, we use NTA to calculate how sustainable of the elderly consumption, which has been published in 2023. And from the graph, you will see that how much sufficient of wealth that you need after you retire if you don't have labor income or any source of income. So this one tells you that in the case of Thailand, you will have approximately nearly $1 million of wealth, to sustain your retirement age. And also, if you don't have that wealth, it means that you have to work more, and it's sure that you have to work like 70% more in terms of value. And if you don't work more, you have to on this side, if you don't have any kind of wealth, you have to reduce your consumption to 57%, or if you have to work more, to 75% in terms of value. So this graph tells you about this to sustain, your elderly life. Next, please. And the fourth area, we use NTA for an ex-ante policy evaluation. So it means that, like on the left-hand side, we try to make the scenario that if we increase the retirement age, or if we raise the productivity, how the NTA graph will change, and how the country, in terms of the sustainability of each age group, can be sustained. So we have some kind of 2 or 3 scenarios for that. And for the right-hand side, we use the NTA to calculate that what is the old age allowance, what types of old age allowance, which can reduce the poverty rate. Like for this researcher, what he do is like two scenarios. If we increase like 1,000 of the old age allowance for every group, after 60, how much of the poverty rate can be reduced? And for the scenario 2, if we kind of increase, 300 baht around that, for the interval, of each old age allowance, because currently in Thailand, if you are 60, you got like 600, and if you are 70, you got like 700 baht per month. So for the second scenario is, if we raise like the 300 baht for each interval of the old age allowance, how much poverty rate can be reduced? And it's sure that the second one is the better option. Next, please. And I think what we are still not doing yet is we also can use NTA for the post policy evaluation as well. Like if you see the NTA graph on the left-hand side, you can see that we start to have the surplus when we are 20 years old, and we will have kind of the deficit after we are 57 years old. So I think in terms of the policy, if we advocate or if we have the old age employment, we can see that, for a certain time, how the age shift. So if the old age policy is effective, the age, should be more than 57, something like that. So I think this is, in many figures of NTA, I think we can use for the post-ante, policy evaluation as well. Next, please. And my last slide, I would like to share that when we have the NTA or NTA data, we should have like the triangle cooperation, from the three parties. The first one is my office, the NESDC. So right now we have the data and the comparison of NTA, and we kind of share this data for researchers. They can make, they can use the data in different angles, for policy recommendation and utilization in other areas as well. So for NESDC, we have the data. We kind of have the NTA institutionalized, in our organization. We use the certain of NTA data for policy application and doing some policy briefs. But still, it's very limited usage of NTA if you don't have an expert or academia who use the NTA and produce more and, different angles of using the NTA for the policy recommendation for. I think the second is the experts or academia that should join the NTA team. And the third one is UNFPA, who always support that for knowledge and skills enhancement and also financial support for NTA activities. Like you will see from Sanyop or, in Indonesian case or China case, that Thailand haven't still, produced some kind of data or graphs. And we still don't have the NTTA because we don't have the time survey or something like that. We don't have the NIA or NT, National Inclusive Account. So I think, in terms of the techniques or, alleviation of our knowledge and skill, we still, need that. And for the NTA network, for us, to help us kind of elevate and the NTA usage in Thailand. So I think that's it for my presentation of, how we use NTA for our policy arena in Thailand. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for really suggesting us how the planning board of the Thai government really use NTA to support your policy planning and application of that. UNFPA has worked with more than 10 countries in the region in terms of engaging on NTA work. And we have NTA kind of a working group or country team really comprising of those who are producer and user of NTA or those who are policy planners. And I hope that during Q&A we can have more exchange with the country team. Some of them are attending here, including those team from the Maldives, for instance. And we know that for NTA, there is also some limitation that it can be used to address, for instance, in terms of gender economy. So I'm pleased that we have our global expert to join us as well. This session is going to be on introducing national time transfer account analysis in understanding the domestic works of women and older person, in which usually it's quite difficult to really analyze that because of lack of limitation of data. But also like what Patrathon mentioned, that we haven't yet really have a lot of NTTA analysis available. So I'm pleased that Dr. Gretchen Donhauer from Center for the Economics and Demography of Aging, CEDA at UC Berkeley, join us 7 p.m. now in Berkeley in the US. I'm glad that you join us online, Gretchen. So the floor is yours now for 10 minutes. Over to you, Gretchen. If you can.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you okay.
Oh, terrific.
Please go ahead.
Okay. So this will be a brief introduction to national time transfer accounts. It's already in many countries in Asia, but not all. So hopefully someday it will be in all countries who are using NTA in Asia. So what you're seeing here is the basic NTA chart. This is for my country, the US, in 2015. Labor income in the solid black line, consumption in the dotted line. and per capita for each age on average. So we see there's a surplus portion and a deficit portion. Now, if we split that out for men and women separately, the dark blue line is male labor income, the red solid line, female labor income, and the dotted lines are consumption. So what we see is a large difference in labor income, not much difference in consumption. So as I mentioned, this is for the US, but it looks broadly similar in many other countries that men at all ages are making more labor income on average compared to women. And so this is a picture of the generational and gendered economy through the NTA lens. So each line on the chart in front of you is an average across several countries in a region of the female to male labor income ratio. So if that ratio was equal, it would be flat across at the level 1, but we see every single average is substantially below that. So that's the gendered economy. That's women making less in the labor market on average than men, both because of differential participation, differential occupation, human capital, wages, all of these differences are rolled up into the difference in those lines. We also see there's a generational aspect of this, that all of the lines are closest to one at the youngest ages and farthest away at the oldest ages. And this is just shown age 20 to 80 so that it won't wiggle too much. The reason that there's this age pattern is both because younger women have less of a human capital disadvantage compared to their male peers than their mothers and grandmothers have. But it's also because once the childbearing and household formation years start, that's when we see these labor income gaps really growing because of taking care of children, because of running households. And so that sort of indicates to you what's missing in this picture. So this picture is from NTA, which is based on national accounts. And traditional national accounting has a gender dimension. So in this 2x2 table, you're seeing in the rows whether goods and services are sold in the marketplace or produced and consumed in the household. And then in the columns, goods versus services. So 3 of those cells, goods and services in the marketplace or goods that are produced and consumed in the household, are included in national accounting, traditional measures like GDP, like national income, like net national income, et cetera. What's not included are services produced and consumed in the household. So, and this example comes from Indian social scientist Indira Hirway. But imagine a household is doing subsistence agriculture and they're growing potatoes. So the seed, the fertilizer to grow that potato is included in GDP. The work that the family is doing to grow the potato is also included in GDP through a guess and imputation process. But once you dig that potato out of the ground and take it to the door of the household, all the labor to turn that potato from a raw vegetable to something you could actually eat is outside of national accounting. And I don't know about you, but I would not like to eat a raw potato. That additional work inside the household is really important, but it's not counted. And this type of work, these services provided in the household, are typically most often done by women, and they're not included in these measures. So here's another example just to show you what's missing. The time spent in unpaid, this is time, not a GDP or monetary based measure. Time spent in unpaid care work is shown in green. Time spent in paid work, and this is both wage work, formal employment, but also an imputation of of unpaid family workers and self-employed time is shown in yellow. So Mexico is across the top. We can see women in Mexico doing much more unpaid care work than paid work. And then for men, it's the opposite. The bottom two graphs are for the US, and kind of the same picture. Women are doing more of that unpaid care work time in green than the paid work in yellow. It's less separate, but it's still, the difference is still in the same direction. So in order to add this unpaid care work time into NTA analysis, we have developed national time transfer accounts. So national time transfer accounts takes household production satellite accounting methodology and combines it with NTA's focus on age disaggregation and transfers. We measure unpaid care work in time use surveys. We value that time with a replacement wage, and we impute consumption of that time to the household members and society who are receiving those unpaid care services. So what that picture looks like, and this is again for the US 2015 and the panel on the right. So women are doing most of that, more of that production than men. Men are doing a lot of it, but women are doing more. The other thing to look at here, which is so important, is the shape of the consumption curve. So in contrast to market goods and services, children are very heavy consumers of this unpaid care time. And also in contrast to market work, men and women keep doing this unpaid care work unto the oldest ages in society, so that the difference between the consumption and production for them is relatively small. I wanted to show you this one picture as well. So this is for a group of countries in the Asian region. Well, Turkey is sort of on the edge, but so these are net time transfers of unpaid care work by different age and sex groups. Men are the blue lines, women are the red lines. So when that line is below zero, that's representing net time transfers to other age and sex groups. So that's the largest transfers, net transfers, are from women in their working ages. But when we're thinking about the meaning of this work for aging, what we really notice here is that in contrast to a lot of worries about a care tsunami, that in aging Asia, we will not be able to take care of all the elderly people who are going to need care. Our estimates do not find much support for that. Now, these are older estimates. We need to update these. It's almost 10 years. However, I will tell you that we have already updated the India estimates to 2018. So that's 20 years later. But the picture looks broadly similar to what it looked like at this point. So in the context of aging research, we really find that older persons are producing a lot of this unpaid care work time. Older grandparents are caring for grandchildren so that adults can maximize their paid labor time. And older spouses are caring for one another and caring for their own households. So just wanted to make a point of that. So how does seeing this unpaid care work help us? So the little donut that you see there shows how important understanding unpaid care work is for future human capital. If we count up all the market goods and services, so food, clothing, shelter, et cetera, that a child consumes in his first year, compared to the value of his parents and communities and grandparents, other family members, unpaid care work time, the market goods and services are only 10% of that total. So one other ways that time transfer accounts help us is to value people's full contributions to our economies and society. So to count the value that older people, especially older women, are producing is very important here. It reveals policy blind spots. For example, I was speaking with a group at the World Bank the other day who is seeing so many countries thinking that the answer to labor force restrictions coming through population aging is to have women work more. But in order for those policies to be successful, they have to understand that women are already doing a great deal of work. They're not just an untapped labor market. So there are a few other points here, but I want to try to stick to my time. So I will stop the share, and I'll be glad to hang around to the Q&A period if we want to talk more. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Gretchen, for giving the concept really. Why do we need NTTA, and how can we make use the evidence will address the blind spot in the policy addressing this issue. So now we have would like to go to discussion. We have 4 discussants who have got the presentation beforehand and really gonna bring us and give some feedback comments from your view about the NTA and NTTA. First, I would like to invite Professor Tero Selrich Wong Karen from University of Indonesia to, yes, please, I give you the microphone. I think you sit here, I invite the discussion to speak, if you don't mind, to speak from here. Thank you.
Thank you. I have 4 points that I'm going to give, only for 2 or 3 minutes, yeah, my time. So the first one is we have to distinguish the NTA method and concept with the national transfer accounts itself. Yeah. So many times what we saw in the front were the application of national transfer account or the concept or some of the calculation of the NTA. But the whole account itself, I didn't really see so far, although perhaps to a degree, presenter from China show the graph, but not the account itself, because the account itself will require so much work and data to it. So that's point number 1. Point number 2 is that in order to be useful for the policymakers, often the nomenclatures in NTA, because it's developed by academics, does not really translate to the daily policy making language, because in each country, policymakers have their own language, especially if it comes to the government budget. They have the term this, and that. And because NTA is developed in academic setting, often it's only talking about or use language that is meaningful only to the model, but not necessarily translated directly to the everyday policy making. The third one that I'm making is, if it's possible, the NTA should be done by the government, even though there's academic involved, but I'm happy to see the Thailand involved government, UNFPA, and also academic, and also in Indonesia. So there's a team. Why? Because NTA, imagine if every academic create national GDP or GNP. That will be a little bit, problematic for us. So it should be only one NTA account. I'm talking about account, yeah, not application of concept or measurement for each country. And it's better if it's done either by the statistical office, the National Statistical Office, because they are the one who actually holding the data, or the National Planning Agency. That's, I think, something that very important. I think that's it. I have the fourth one, but I think because of the time and also those 3 already much. Thank you, Wasana.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Toro. I think your comments is right to spot that what Professor Song Yapli also discussed earlier, talking about how to institutionalize NTA into the system, and in which we have seen example, like in Thailand or Indonesia, And also like in Vietnam, also they're talking about General Statistical Office to really calculate NTA and make that to support policy attention. So now I would like to go to the next discussion. I would like to invite Professor Tengku Aisan from University of Putrajaya, Malaysia, to give your view on the presentation that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Asana, and thank you very much for the excellent presentation. I think all of you did a very clear presentation on how NTA has been used. And my comment is about, yes, it is very important because I know that in Thailand and also in Indonesia, it's already been institutionalized. And the effort that is involved in this calculation is tremendous. I think they just showed you the pictures, but I think there are very strong there are strength in NTA, and as Parapat showed, there is a need for combination of stakeholders involved in the calculation, because what it does is that as also Sanyo mentioned, that you have the technical people who does the calculation behind it. You also need the policy makers to look at what does the graph means and how do we can translate it. And also in the Indonesia portion, she did shows the strength of how we can simulate things. For example, the increase of 5%, 10% and 30%, what does it mean to policies and things like that. So I thought this versatility of using the methodology is very good, and the visualization of the NTA graphs are very, very critical, because at one glance you know already with 1%, 5%, and what is the effect and things like that. And that is very critical in terms of politicians want to quick decision making, you see that point and then what does it mean, things like that. So I thought that was very intuitive in terms of the presentation. And the other issue about NTTA, as Gretchen mentioned, many of our countries in this part of the world has not really done a national NTTA data. We don't have national NTTA data. We have small data sets and things like that, but that is very critical when we are in the aging process, because we always undervalue the contribution of women in the workforce, and we are also asking women to give more birth, to have more babies and things like that, and that's not a right policy in terms of the aging process. So I think these are the critical things that we need to look into, that we can utilize the NTTA and NTA system for us to really work together. But for me, it has to be a teamwork from all the different stakeholders to work together to do the technical part, and also to decipher what needs to be done with all these graphs that we draw, things like that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Aizan, for really highlighting the usefulness of NTA. But yeah, there are more room, for work that need to be done. How we can simplify communication and translate and work together with policy planners. Now I go to my colleague Michael Herman, from a senior economist from UNFPA headquarters. So over to you, Michael.
Thank you. Look, I think from a UNFPA perspective, let me just say that this is a very useful tool. It's the most rigorous way to link demography to the economy. Yeah? That's why we are promoting it around the world. But a bit unlike you, I would say that we don't just need the charts, okay? Because I feel the charts don't tell us whether a country can finance the life cycle deficit. The charts doesn't tell us policy implications. So I think we need the data. We need a much more systematic way to collect the data or produce the data, as was said earlier, ideally by statistical offices on a regular basis, as part of satellite accounts to the national accounts, if you like. But then we also need to encourage a much broader analysis and use of this data, by economists, by others. And imagine, economists don't create national accounts. They use national accounts data. And I think this is what we have to encourage with the NTAs. We have to subject the NTAs to broader analysis. You have to look at economic growth, at labor force participation, labor productivity, technology, internal, external balances to make sense of it, to know what this deficit means, whether this deficit can be addressed, whether it can be financed, whether it can be reduced, okay? So I think we really need these second steps in the analysis, the production of the data, the creation of the charts is nice, but the charts don't tell us policy implications. And then finally, my final point maybe is that countries, to reduce the life cycle deficit is not an end in itself. It's not the ultimate objective of anything, yeah? So sometimes we produce these deficits and then I think we're conditioned to think, oh, a deficit is really bad. How can we make it smaller? But countries have multiple policy objectives: reduce poverty, reduce inequality, promote universal health coverage, education, and so the ambition to reduce a deficit has to be seen in the broader context of other policy objectives, okay, if that makes sense. So again, I think you need more systematic efforts in production, more subjecting it more to broader analysis by economists, and understanding the life cycle deficit in the policy context. Yeah, it's not an end in itself to reduce.
Thank you.
I'd like to add another one, because the NTA is really focused on the economy, and you have several assumptions that you need to do it. Maybe there are the reasons why it came to be like that. Maybe you have the other cultural issues and things like that that's not accounted for in our calculation. So I think those things, those variables needs to be considered by policymakers, because the cultural aspect of it, the behavior, the aspect of it in terms of all these labor force participation and things like that, why the barriers are there and all that. Because in the methodology itself, it's just about calculating the economic focus about it. So I think that's one thing that we also need to consider. As you mentioned, we need a broader aspects of looking at just not the figures, but what does it mean? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think that there's more to be done, really, after we have seen this big picture, but NTA really helped generate question. Next question, and how data and analysis can really help you to really get evidence to support policy attentions. So now I would like to invite Professor Long from National Economic University of Vietnam. Over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your excellent presentation about NTA in China, Indonesia, and also Thailand. Actually, as the team leader for NTA Vietnam for more than 10 years, and also applying that kind of NTA result to policy advocacy in Vietnam, I would like to share some really important observation. The first one is that we can use NTA to change the mindset of policymakers to understand the difference between, say, demographic dependency ratio and economic dependency ratio. Because usually in Vietnam, we think that, with the current demographic structure, Vietnam will have demographic dividend until 2041. But actually, using NTA, we show that, it's very short, just only 5 years more, something like that. Using, economic approach rather than a purely demographic approach. So now we are, discussing with each other how to take advantage of, young generation, to prepare and also adapt for aging population. That is, I think, one of the successful for NTA group in Vietnam in using NTA for policy advocacy. But I think it's very important for us to understand and also to interpret the result from NTA. The first one, as you can see that in the slide by Shang Hop Lee and also from other country, you can see that the demographic change in the country contribute to the NTA surplus and also deficit. You can see Vietnam and Singapore are very different from each other, right? In terms of surplus. But I think that job pattern is very important, because in Vietnam we have more people in informal sector. They work a little in industry and also service, but different from Singapore. So if we compare between Vietnam and Singapore, it will be like a bias when we compare something like that. So interpretation of the result between the country very, very important. And we be careful with the job pattern. And especially after the COVID, job already changed. That is why we need to re-estimate the labor market based on what already changed. The second one, I think that the disease pattern and also the disability among the population also change over time. That is why care needs, care costs and also healthcare costs change rapidly, not only in Vietnam, but I'm sure that in many other countries. So that is why if we use the same structure of the old data, right, applying just using the new structure of population, we cannot reflect, the real cost of healthcare and also care in the future. That is why we need to, update and also to simulate, the cost of care and healthcare. Last but not least, I think that policy implication from NTA and policy practices is very different. Because we say that, okay, we need to improve the productivity of labor. But the country like Vietnam, we have 60 million people in the labor force, right? Mostly like low skin. How the government can change from the low skin to high skin? Just only some year, right? That is why maybe government have to choose to use some kind of industry that use more people in the labor market rather than choosing, some kind of very high productivity industry. So policy implication is one sense, but policy practices is in the other one. That is why we need to advocate more and more. And at the same time, we should provide more practical, policy implication to the government rather than just purely academic one. So that's my message. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Long. I think you'll be happy to know that, from UNFPA discussion with GSO Vietnam over a week ago when I was there, GSO really committed to really produce NTA, and they have assigned those who work on SIA, Statistics System of National Account, and those on population statistics to work together on NTA. And we will continue to need your support, expert in Vietnam, to support this kind of government-led initiative. So I'm sorry that it's 10:30, but I think we should allow Q&A really. So you may be a bit late for your coffee break. So can I see your hand, please, if how many would like to raise question? So we start from you. Quickly introduce yourself, and over to you, and at the back. Please introduce yourself and that's the question.
This is Santa Srestha from Nepal. Very excellent presentation by all the presenters. Congratulations. And my question again may be to the Michael. Because we already know that NTA is not really addressing the ground reality of care work, quadruple burden of women. And for that, NTTA is now as an alternative or complementary. So my question again here is, we all know that this national system of account, which is, the global system, is not really addressing the ground reality, particularly the burden of women. So we are talking about change in that national system of accounting all over the world, in all the institutions. So my question is whether this NTTA will really help in, advocating globally to really transform or change or, I don't know, national system of account in this new era of digitalization and this demographic dividend, and especially when now, this Summit for the Future at the global level, this Pact for the Future, which is also talking about, financial institution, changing or transforming, improving the financial institution. So my question, whether it really contribute to bringing that change all over, including for the older people of all over. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent question. That for Michael and also perhaps from Gretchen later on. So we over to second.
So my name is Nga from the World Bank office in Hanoi. I just want to raise a question. I mean, this previous speaker already saying about when you look at the surplus and deficits, you need to unpack, right? What is the factor contributing to that kind of thing? And it's not only like a surplus in a certain situation or deficit is bad, right? In a situation like I see the Chinese experience, right? You see surplus is happening earlier, right? At the 20 year, because now young people, you know, it's kind of start working earlier than before, but then it's not really good because that is the time where the people can accumulate, right? Skill and, you know, workforce. Need to learn more and then accumulate your knowledge and the skill at the end that you can transfer into a more productive employment, right? But in this case, maybe surplus earlier stage is maybe it's not really an ideal case, right? So I'm thinking like, I mean, when we look into that, we need also to unpack. And in a certain situation, it's not always bad in terms of deficit. And also, I just want also to bring in, and then in this case, I don't know how is the discussion with, you know, with the government of China. What are you going to, you know, to address this issue, right? In a certain situation. And I think that this is not only in case of China, but it also happen in other countries in around the region because of the gig worker, gig economies that people is now kind of started working earlier. And then I think the same, I wonder why the presentation from Indonesia, when you talk about deficits, and then you put the scenario is kind of, you know, reducing the informality from 1%, 10%. I wonder, is this like the trends? Because in our situation analysis, the informality seems to be stay for many years now, and even sometimes it's increasing. So it's not, you know, you're not kind of moving, you know, easily transferring from, you know, bring people from informal to formal easily, and it seems to be like stagnant within the different countries. So I wonder why you come up with such kind of scenario. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I wish we have more time. These are excellent questions, but we really need to wrap up soon. So thanks for that question, and our colleague will respond later. We have seen one at the back from GSO Maldives. Over to you.
Thank you. I'll try to keep it short since we are running out of time. I have two questions. No, one question. First one is for Indonesia. Well, you actually did look at a poverty rate using NTA approach, and you actually looked at transforming the informal worker to formal worker. These are really good work initiatives you have done in Indonesia. I'm just curious to know whether this was done based on from the policy side, from the policy requirement coming into it. My second question is more of a reflection on the discussion that took place just now, where they were talking about the government taking the initiative to do the NTAs in the country. Well, in Maldives, it's actually the government who has done, the Maldives Bureau of Statistics who has done the NTA. But we are facing so many challenges when we do it from the government side as well. And I think what Michael just right now pointed out was right, is something we have to take into consideration when moving forward, is how best we can institutionalize it. And encourage other government institutions as well as the academia into taking up NTA into their work and doing various policy works based on the NTA as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any more hands? Yes, Reiko, over to you.
This is Reiko Hayashi from Japan, National IPSS. This is not my own question, but actually the question on Michael and Turo were not answered. They were asking about where is the account itself, where is data instead of charts. So I now checked that normally this kind of data is uploaded in ntaaccount.org, but I checked right now, it was not showing. So I wonder if the site is still being updated or not. And then at least we have started to put the data of Japanese NTA, and then it is available on our website, which we are also depending to the Ministry of Health, Labor, Welfare. So maybe we can talk later, but I think it is very important that every time we have this kind of NTA seminar, it is always with charts, not going into deeper inside. So I think the next time maybe you can come up with all the list of countries with the link to the data itself, account data. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for a very useful suggestion. I don't know, the speakers, do you have like 1 minute response? Maybe, Professor Song Yop Lee, are you still online? Do you have
Yes,
any?
yes,
Okay.
I am.
Anything that you would like to respond?
Oh, no,
1
I
minute.
mean, it's a great presentation, great discussion. So we need to produce data, and we need to continue to analyze it, and we need like a communicator who can communicate with the stakeholders. And then also we need to see the broader picture, so because the government has multiple objects, and we need to take whether we can take like ex ante and ex post measures to evaluate it. So these are all great questions. So I don't have actually anything to add. I mean, and also IPS. I mean, for the IPSS questions, I'll be there in December. So I'll present how can we actually share the data sets and continue to actually produce, and how can you institutionalize it, right? So we'll talk about that. So that's the difficult part. But one thing I want to add is that sometimes, I mean, institutionalize is very important, but you need to collaborate with the researchers, because as I mentioned, the whole my presentation is about that, right? So if we once institutionalized, in some cases, actually like a States Bureau doesn't want to share the data actually with the researchers, or limited. So this is one issue that we have to address in the future. Okay, I'll stop here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We 10 minutes over time, but I still would like to hear feedback very quickly. Maybe perhaps over to Gretchen first and then to speakers. Gretchen, anything you would like to respond here as you are online?
Just about the question of the time transfer accounts, do they really have the capacity to change our understanding of things on the ground? It is a great time to be working in this area. The International Labor Organization has really pushed sort of changing the definition of work, its official manuals of what is measured when we talk about work, to include this unpaid care work. And they have developed reduced time use diaries that countries can use to collect time use data in a much less expensive way than doing a full survey themselves. So there really is a recognition of needing this kind of data to understand the reality of work on the ground and make policies that really optimize well-being instead of just a narrow sort of labor earnings outcome. So I think this work does have the potential to really make positive changes in this area.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gretchen. Now we're back to our presenters. First from Chenker, and then Fiska, and then.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your excellent question. Okay, yeah, like in our NTA results, we are not making the judgments whether the surplus or deficit is right or wrong, is good or bad. Just as you mentioned that, yeah, the life cycle surplus in China is starting at a later age. That could be very good because, yeah, the young people are having more education. And the thing is that we are trying to address this issue. We are trying to see how we can better finance the deficit for the youth through more transfer system and through more reliable financial institutions. Okay, so this is what we can learn from our NTA results. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the questions. I think the questions is related to the poverty and then the simulations of informal worker to formal worker. I believe there's a difference in the figure of formal and informal worker in every country. And in Indonesia itself, the share of the informal worker is still high. It's almost 60% of the worker, and also the wages is 3 times lower. So by transforming it to the formal sector, and it will influence other policies such as the insurance and also the wages and also other worker insurance. And at the end of the day, it will also affecting their wages and also well-being. So that is why there's a relations between the poverty and also how I transform it from informal to formal worker, because there is still high of informal worker in Indonesia.
So in my part, no question, but I just want to address the way how we can lift up this community. So I am the policy analyst. I'm not the one who making the NTA report. Actually, Dr. Suparnada, who unfortunately who cannot come today. She's the man-in-chief, actually. So she's the one who making the NTA report, and also she also the policy analyst as well. But for me, I am purely the policy analyst. I think we can bridge the gap because two department is still not kind. So her department is doing NTA and also policy recommendation. Mine is just the usage. But I think we can bridge the gap if we have some kind of the community between each two, from the draft report, what's the question of the policy analysts have, and, kind of delve down into this data, or what kind of NTA data can provide more policy implication. I think if we can have this kind of stage and, dialogue, interaction, it will be very, very helpful, especially, as a policy analyst.
Thank you so much. It's going to be hard for me to summarize, and we run out of time. I just have two takeaway message for you. As UNFPA, we really work closely with our government counterparts through our country offices, and we managed to really work with more than 10 countries in the region, trying to really institutionalize NTA or working on second generation of NTA that is go beyond working with expert and academic institution, but engaging population policy institution, like in the case of Indonesia, Thailand, also like in the Maldives and Sri Lanka and other countries. Yeah. And second one, we are trying to simplify the language and understanding of this. And with that, I hope that you have this postcard on your table. If you would like to see NTA report produced by country offices we work, you can scan it from here. They also contain many other reports related to that. So with that, NTA report, yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot. Sorry for reminding me that. Patra reminded me that on 10 to 13 of March next year, Thai government, her office, together with NTA Global Network, we organize the next global NTA conference in Bangkok. So just give you this announcement beforehand, and we will let you know about this event. Thank you so much, and thank you. Please give a round of applause to everybody. Yeah. Thank you so much. And now I would like to give the floor back to our host, Park Maliki. Could you please give a closing remark? A quick one.
Okay, thank you, and congratulations for all the speakers as well as the discussants and all the participants. It seems like this is quite serious and quite significant progress on NTA. And I just pointed out there are three challenges for us for NTAs. The first is disseminations of the NTA itself, because this one is part of the most important factors, how we can make all the policymakers actually understand what is the NTAs. And then institutionalize of the NTAs, because some of the country already succeed to make it institution and formal, such as Korea. And I think maybe this is like homework for the rest of the countries. And the last one is the point of how we can use the NTA for the policymakers, how we can use it and optimize it for a more effective policy for us, for each countries. I think that's all. Thank you again for the participations, and have a good remaining days for these 2 days in the conference. Thank you.